Join your host, Maddie Roach, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host. I'm honored to interview Jocelyn Wright, owner and founder of the Accession Group, a fee-only firm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the show today. During today's episode, Jocelyn outlines her path for getting into and working her way around this industry. She's an MBA and a CFP, and has had experience working in the banking industry, the BD world, and now is 11 years into running her own firm that primarily serves professional Black women. Today, Jocelyn talks a lot about how a mentorship relationship was a turning point in her career and how she hopes to be that role model to students and other advisors of color in this industry. We talk about how despite being the first and only Black person in many rooms over the years and at many conferences, she always viewed it as an opportunity and continued to lean in by networking. Jocelyn's passion for her work is evident in this interview, but what is more evident is her clarity on how important our current environment is for making real change in our industry, and how, if we don't act now, we may lose this opportunity forever. Jocelyn's drive is strong and hopes to grow her firm even more by partnering with and providing space for other advisors like her in the coming years. If you're interested in how you too can seize the moment to make this industry more diverse, inclusive, and equitable, then this show is for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/265. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Jocelyn Wright. Hello, Jocelyn. Welcome to XYPN Radio.
Hi, Maddie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm so looking forward to this interview. It's always a pleasure to interview someone with as much experience in this industry as someone like you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's get started with kind of just high level about your firm. I'm really interested in kind of where you're located, number of clients, and what you built.
Sure. Well, I am located right outside of Philadelphia, PA, so in the suburbs of Philly, and I have about 50 clients. So still, building, have capacity for growth. And my clients largely are women, female professionals, Black primarily, but not entirely exclusively, who are single without children. And a lot of that it was intentional in a way, because when I first started in the business, that was and still is my profile, although I'm nearly 20 years older. But I realized that the profession overlooked that demographic. And so I thought it was important that people who were in the position that I was in, that they had access to competent financial planning and people who understood why they needed to work with a professional like financial planners.
Great. And we're going to talk about really what led you to that moment to decide to open up your own firm. How long has your RIA been in business?
It'll be 11 years.
Wow, 11 years.
In July, next month.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And so your career did not start in the RIA space with your firm. It started much earlier than that. So let's go back in time to when you first started in this industry and what got you into it.
Sure. So I officially started in the business in 2002. And well, I guess officially in 2002. So I had been interested in financial planning since I was younger. Thought that I would primarily go into banking. So, always interested in money. I share with you on sort of our pre-call that always like counting money. So growing up with board games, Monopoly, and Life, wanting to be the banker at all times so I could count and not only count, but control.
There you go.
So that was the important thing. And going into school, my father had two businesses, largely cash-based. So, he would bring home the receipts. I always wanted to count, organize, make sure the money was all facing the same way, everything was straight. My sisters will remind me too occasionally that I had this thing for organization. So my parents had their church envelopes and I would take their receipts and put them in church envelopes. So that's, I think, where the organization and the money came together and didn't realize it until much later on that, I was destined to be a financial planner. And so when I went to school, I thought that I would go into banking because, banks, that's where the money is. You can count all you want. But in my sophomore year, my father's mother passed away. And that was probably the first significant death that I had ever experienced. And finding out that she had a very small life insurance policy, it just occurred to me, why didn't we know better? And so that is when I made the transition to wanting to be a financial planner. And of course, at that time, my school, although they do now, did not have a personal financial planning degree program. So, I had to go about it in a different way than someone who was entering the profession, a young person entering the profession would be able to do now.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by the number of programs out there that do allow graduates to achieve their CFP, even, as they walk across the stage. So what was your route?
I got my undergrad degree, and I guess I should shout out my university, University of Delaware. They do have a personal financial planning program. I got an undergraduate degree in business administration finance. So, the route, I figured I'd go and start out somewhere else. But to be quite candid, having been a good student all of my life up until that point, I went to undergrad and it was just like, wait a minute, I can't just review notes. And so I graduated, thank you, Lord. I have no problem admitting that, which means that, the job offers were not forthcoming as I had hoped, but I did work throughout school. So, I knew that I was a much better student than my grades indicated. So that graduate school was, okay, you have to do this. Wanted to do it anyway, but it was more so to prove to myself, yes, I know you're a good student. And, having to then be able to pivot in terms of my entry into the professional world too, because I couldn't let the undergrad show as, okay, this is what you are as a student. So I worked for several years and then went to grad school to get my MBA. Now, when I went to get my MBA, there were more programs coming up where you could get a master's in financial planning. But after talking to a good friend who had recently gotten her MBA, she said, I know this is what you want to do, but that's still so new. I would advise that you get an MBA and still pursue the financial planning side, but you'll just have more flexibility with having an MBA. And so I did that with the hopes that, once I finished, I would, start as a financial planner, go and work for someone and, learn on their dime, because I knew eventually I did want to have my own business. That is something that my father, taught me that, you should control your own destiny. So that was always a goal of mine. The timing, I didn't know so much, but the ultimate goal was to have my own business. And so after grad school, went to work at one of the major banks. It was 2000 when I finished. I guess I should have known that some crazy things were going to happen because while I was in my summer training, the bank merged with another bank. And there were some people in my training class who, by the time the summer was over, they were already being laid off because of the merger. So you heard stories of, hey, I had an assignment over, I went out of the country and it was basically like, you don't have a job. So it was scary. And, for a newly minted MBA where you just think, hey, the world is just here for the taking, you're ready to go and roll career wise. And to have things like that happen were really disheartening and scary, in fact, because born and raised in Philadelphia, I moved to Houston for this job opportunity, saw that as some place that I would call home, at least for the foreseeable future. So I purchased a home, and all the while you're hearing stories of, hey, I hear that your department's about to be kind of let go. And you're not getting answers, quite candidly, about what's going to happen. And you're thinking, okay, I just made this huge financial commitment in buying a house. This is home. My family's all back in the Philadelphia area, and I'm here by myself. So I was very nervous. And eventually, after months of you're about to get to call, your department's getting the axe, it finally happened. And it just really reinforced you need to control your own destiny, because I never wanted to be in a position again where some company was going to dictate my future. So I was fortunate to have been introduced to someone who had their own firm, who was a financial planner. And, from there is when it actually, I became officially a financial advisor and started in the business. So, it wasn't the route that I had anticipated. I wasn't financially prepared to do it because, my intention was at least to work for 5 years with the firm and then, build up the experience, get the credentials and, everything that I felt that I needed at the time, and also build up that reserve that you would need to start a business. But, 5 years turned out to be about a year and a quarter.
Wow. And interesting, during that year and a quarter, you went from talking with someone who said financial planning is new to someone who's actually doing it. I'm interested, what was the perspective of that it was new? Is it that people weren't seeing it happen, that the RIA space hadn't really grown out at that point?
Right. So, and new in the fact that it was, the friend of mine was another Black woman. So I didn't know any Black women who were doing that. Now, my mentor and the firm that I joined happened to be owned by a Black woman. So, I was able to see that every day, someone who was very successful in the business too. So that kind of turned a lot of what I thought about the business upside down.
Yeah, it showed you really what you could build.
Exactly.
So what experience from the bank did you take into that firm of yours or with your mentor? What experience did you feel like that really equipped you with to be able to make it transferable into the RIA space?
Well, from the banking experience, not much, because I did not get into the role that I ultimately want to be in the private bank role at that firm. So, other than having the experience of, a year and making connections in a city that I had not, had never lived in before, or didn't know anyone. So, it did give me that benefit of, beginning to build a network, because that's definitely important as you build your business and your practice.
Yeah. And how did you meet your mentor? How did you identify her as someone that you wanted to get to know and possibly work for?
So I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So one of my sorority sisters, who happened to be the editor at the time of the Houston Chronicle's personal finance section.
Wow.
When I called her, as I was making calls of, hey, I'm not going to be at this company anymore. Here's my new information. She said, well, wait a minute, now's a good time. So I didn't preface that. That was 2001. So you add in 9/11 in Houston, you add in Enron. So things were nuts, just nuts. And then the layoff. So all of that's happening. And so I was telling her, here's my new contact information. I'm not going to be with the firm anymore. This is how you can reach me. So she says, no, this is not a good time to be, not working or not have something. And I was very fortunate, just blessed, in fact, that she said, well, what is it that you want to do? And, you hear people say this all the time and you're just like, yeah, whatever. That's like someone saying, oh, good morning. How you doing? we really don't want to hear how you're doing. That's the courtesy thing to do, you know? So I just thought, and I said, you know what the hell? I'll just tell her I want to be a financial planner. And this was my goal. But of course, I wouldn't think that I would be starting now, but here we are. And she says, you know what? Here are two women that she's had the opportunity to interview because of what she does that have their own firm. Reach out to them. I called both of them. Where I landed, Cheryl, I got her and scheduled an appointment, came in, and kind of everything's history from there. So it was really, I'd say divine intervention as to how I got to the firm where I started. And I say all of the time, I credit her. If it were not for her mentorship and guidance and support, quite honestly, through those early years, I would not be in this business because I would have failed out and likely gone back begrudgingly to a corporate role where there was a guaranteed income for a period of time. And I would have been out of my mind unhappy, I'm sure. But because of the support that she provided me over those first few years, I was able to maintain and sustain myself. Now, it was tough, certainly coming from a salaried position as a newly minted MBA to, hey, you get what you get, kind of, I hate to, eat what you kill is what they say. Mm-hmm. I wasn't eating too well, but I was still able to make it. So with her support, along with my parents' support, I was able to stay and here we are now, almost 20 years later.
Wow. I really commend your passion and drive to getting where you wanted to be, which was in the role of a financial planner. What was driving you so hard to being in that role? I mean, as an MBA and as someone that was likely very hireable in all different sorts of industries, why was it financial planning that was so important to you?
So when my grandmother passed away and knowing that she had an inadequate life insurance policy, that just stuck with me, like how many other families is this happening to? This is certainly when someone passes away, someone who's, the matriarch of the family, that shouldn't be something that the family should be concerned about. And I didn't want other families to go through that same thing. And, financial planning was the thing. I was always interested in budgeting, making budget forms, organizing finances, making sure I'm downloading, tracking all of my expenses. So I was doing that already. And then that coming together really played into it. And in college, I was in Delaware. I went to the University of Delaware. So that was sort of the credit card headquarters. Every major bank had a credit card. So I worked in collections, started off in customer service, but worked in collections. And so I saw how many people were getting into financial trouble, not understanding, the credit card limits, repaying on time, just making minimum payments. So all of these things led up to people just don't understand money and it's not being taught to us in any way. And how can I help to, bring that financial education to more people?
Mm-hmm. And now your mentor, Cheryl, you said her name was.
Yes.
What kind of firm was she building? What was her clientele like? What was the service that she was offering?
Sure. So her firm was a fee-based firm. So largely, there were other advisors there who, had a different focus, but she largely worked with a lot of doctors and business owners. She had been in the business for a long time. She was had every credential imaginable. She's CFP. She was also a CPA, although she wasn't practicing. But, she was everything that a young planner, a Black female planner would want to see, as an example every day coming into the office. And, that drive to stay in, even when it was difficult. And I'm sure she was probably 2 weeks away from saying, okay, Jocelyn, this isn't working. But, I survived. But part of that too, for me, not giving up on myself was I didn't want, also like the people who thought that I couldn't make it. I didn't want to give them that benefit of saying, see, we didn't think she could make it, because there was a time before I went back to grad school, I had taken the test at one of the major organizations who do financial planning. And I didn't, kind of fit that personality profile. I remember as I'm taking the test saying, I'm not going to it's not a pass fail, but I'm not going to display via this test the profile that they're looking for. Because I even remember, again, it's more than 20 years ago, some of the questions were, if you wrote a book and you're walking through the airport, would you want people to come up to you to ask for your autograph? And I'm like, who gives a kitty? So I mean, they were like, to me, asinine questions to try, but it's all trying to get to see if you're this type A personality who's all about attention, largely, I think, geared toward men. But here we are. And I really haven't told this story very often, but as we're talking, I'm remembering this. And I knew that I wasn't going to get a call after that because I wasn't seeking attention. I was seeking to help people, not to get attention for it. And I didn't. And even with Cheryl's firm, I had to take a test. And I may have said something to her like, these tests that's not going to show anything in terms of my ability or desire to be in this profession, because I'm not out to be like the top gun, all over, with people wanting to talk to me and, being the center of attention. That's just not who I am at my core. And despite that, she still, brought me on. So I hopefully they're not doing those personality tests anymore, but they probably are.
Interesting. Were they a personality test? Was that the kind of test just to see if you're a culture fit, as people say? I mean, that sounds pretty
it's
dangerous.
Probably the culture fit. And, because just think at that time, and it still is largely white male.
Right.
So, these kind of aggressive locker room types, and that's what it was. So,
yeah,
I can look back and continue as I continue to progress in my career and hopefully, be blessed to continue to build and grow. Maybe I'll send a letter to that organization.
I think that may be warranted. I'd be interested.
Like how many other people may you have missed out on because we weren't,
what
attention seekers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting hiring process and a practice that I think would probably be used to make sure certain people came in and certain people stayed out. But What a wonderful gift that you and Cheryl were able to connect. And so she was able to give you this space. Was it during that time that you were working with Cheryl that you decided the CFP was the next route for you?
Right. So I knew I was interested in the CFP even before I started with her. So I was going to start that if I hadn't gotten a position, just self-study. And because I thought that, okay, if you're going to do financial planning, you need to have a designation that says you're a financial planner. And one of the best pieces of advice that she gave me was, Jocelyn, just slow down. Really, pump your brakes. I understand that the CFP is important to you, but I would advise that you work a little bit in this business and then go and study for the exam. And as I said, that was one of the best pieces of advice that she had given me, was to slow down, because I had the opportunity to work, get exposure to different types of clients. So I worked in the financial planning department for the firm too. And so I saw clients that were, had a different type of client than what I was bringing in. And so that exposed me to different things. So when I started the coursework, I was able to see practical, this was like such and such a client. And it all made sense, because even with the MBA, that has nothing to do with the CFP. Granted, in the finance portion, in the investment class, I was grooving. But that did not help me in insurance or the estate planning. It all came together. And so by slowing down and working and getting some practical experience, I think that helped me get through the coursework and ultimately sit and take one time and pass the CFP.
Congrats. That's an achievement. I'm interested in the MBA. How has that played out as a benefit to you as you've started to build your own firm?
Well, just looking at it, so I was not a general management. I was a finance MBA. So, just the investment side of it, had an interest in investing, not to the point of wanting to be a CFA or going down that route. But it helped me in just overall, understanding concepts and being able to also explain to clients in a manner that didn't feel like it was talking over them. Mm-hmm. So, while you're having an understanding of some of these concepts, you don't want, that's one of the taboos. You don't speak all of your business and finance lingo to them. Talk in a relatable way so that they get an understanding of the concepts. And then just building a business in general, taking a lot of the things that I learned in business school to at least knowing these are the right things that you need to do. Not always doing them, but at least you know what it is that you need to be doing.
Yeah. Well, with that kind of academic background plus a great mentor, I would think that you're really set up to be able to go after that goal of running your own firm. So how long did you stay at Cheryl's firm before you departed to start your own?
So a little over 5 years.
Okay.
So even then, I didn't start my own firm immediately. So I went from that firm. It was a fee-based firm, but it was an insurance-based BD. So from there, I went to an independent firm for about a year or so. And in that time too, I moved from Houston back home to Philadelphia. So it wasn't until I got back home to Philadelphia when I started my own firm and quite honestly saw what really the diversity numbers were. One of the additional blessings of being at Cheryl's firm is that it was run by a Black woman, large, more than 50% female, more than 50% minority. So I thought this was what it looked like on the outside. And, because I was new, I wasn't doing a lot of networking or affiliated with business, like the FPA. I would go to a meeting here or there, and I guess it didn't even dawn on me like, hey, you're the only Black person in this room or the Black woman in this room. But, I knew what I was going back to. So it's like you go out and play, but then home is, very diverse.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Philadelphia, I, wanted to look for women and Black women who were in the business. And that was, finding a needle in the haystack. It's not that we don't exist. It's just very few and far between. So of course, coming back home, I, at this point had, almost 10 years of experience and, so you have a higher level of confidence. And, so I knew it was important for me to network, join some other professional organizations. And that's when, you go to these different meetings and you're like, wait a minute, I am the only woman in the room. I am the only Black person or the Black woman in the room. And so, you have a decision to make. Do you see this as, pardon my French, like, damn, this is just too much. I don't want to be the only, because there are quite honestly some people who they don't want to be the only. I've talked to some people as, trying to build, like we're trying to build this diversity effort, would you want to be involved? And they quite honestly say, you know what, when you get it figured out, call me. Then I'm on board, but I'm not trying to be the first. I'm not, it's just because sometimes that is a burden that's too hard, I won't say too hard, too much for people to take on. So, I just had to say to myself, let's see this as an opportunity versus just, okay, how can you, one, leverage this, and what can you do to make sure that more people that look like you come into this room?
During those meetings, I imagine that was hard to be able to look around and then choose the path that you did, saying, I do want to take this as an opportunity. How were you received?
So, I had not experienced, there was no kind of condescending nature. So a lot of times, it's almost as if you're this, they look at you as this novelty, because people would come, well, tell me about yourself. Like, tell me about your firm. So, at this point too, diversity and inclusion efforts were beginning to, become a little bit more in vogue. And so people would be interested, and then they try to recruit you, and still do now, because it's not as if they've changed that much. So, you're getting like, well, would you want to be a part of my firm? And, have you thought about changing? I'm kind of once scorned. I hold that for a while. So I hold to the fact that I want to be in control of my own destiny. So the prospect of working for another firm, I mean, the opportunity would have to be so sweet. Yeah. And I have not come across that opportunity yet. So I'm going to ride this thing until the wheels fall off. merging with, working with others, but definitely I need to have some level of control in terms of how things roll out. To be an employee, again, is not something that I, at this point in my life, nearly 50 years old, that I don't think that I would do again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I imagine that pitching this concept of financial planning to women of color is not necessarily easy for a lot of the same reasons you've just listed. Becoming a business owner in this realm wasn't easy. How was kind of building your niche? What was it like to begin to market to people that have so traditionally been overlooked in this industry?
Well, I was able to, in addition to the support, working with some of the clients that Cheryl had, because she had, a well-established clientele, largely doctors. And so she would invite me to come in and work with some of the younger docs that these experienced doctors were bringing on. So, that helped greatly. And, they knew that they had a need, getting their stuff in order. They're just getting set up. So, the need was great. Now, I will say that for those types of professionals, the industry does market to and tend to cater to. But when it is someone who has a professional job that's not a doctor or an attorney, largely they are overlooked. And so, being able to use some of the connections that I did make were very helpful. And because the firm where I was, Cheryl had a great reputation, that helped in terms of, hey, and she was supportive. She would go to meetings or be available for meetings when people came in. So it's as if they were getting 2 for 1, So here's Jocelyn, she's eager to get going. But then here's Cheryl, she has, all this experience. She's built this firm. And, that certainly helped in being able to open the door and having that confidence when I called people like, oh, she was still has a very good reputation, a wonderful reputation in Houston and the area of financial planning.
Awesome. You, during our meeting before we recorded today, mentioned that your firm is still under construction. And I love that because you've been running it for nearly 11 years to the month. Why do you say it's still under construction?
Well, with so many things changing, technology is changing, the business is changing. When you think of, how from a regulatory standpoint, those things have happened. And I've, made changes as those things happen and still trying to get to the kind of that sweet spot of my firm. You have the experience and you're just looking at, okay, well, what's that client, that really good client, the types of clients that I want to, work with and partner with as they navigate their financial lives. So that's kind of the under construction part, still making changes to the business model, the service offerings. Because of technology, we're able to do so much more. So how does that work? Just playing with different things. I'm still very intent on wanting to, partner with someone or someone else, so how to leverage the expertise and experience of other people that are in alignment with what I do, not, mirror images, because you want people who have expertise in areas where you may not, that's not where you shine. So, really wanting to do that within the next year. And so that's kind of the under construction part, because ideally I do want to have a firm that's not just a lifestyle practice, but wanting to build an organization where you're not only able to do well and right by your clients, but build a place where other young people who look like me can come in and grow and learn and thrive as well. So, I mentioned to you, I do a lot of diversity work in this profession. So as I'm talking to and about firms, telling them this is what you should be doing, I'm a firm believer in I should not be asking of someone else to do something that I would not do or could not do. So, I at least have to give it, the college try of, okay, why don't you build a firm that is inclusive, that creates opportunities for women, for people of color to come in and to grow and succeed. because you know what you were looking for. And as I said, just the benefit that I had of having a Black female mentor and how I know that impacted my career and my trajectory.
Yeah. Congratulations on being in that inflection point, though, of kind of what we call the scaling firm inflection point of you've reached kind of capacity to serve your clients on your own. You either need to hire or you need to scale back. You need to decide lifestyle versus enterprise. Sounds like you're going to be building kind of an ensemble practice with some other advisors. And what are you doing to make sure that you are being that Cheryl that was to Jocelyn? How are you going about that?
So I speak at different events about diversity and the work that I do. So right now, in addition to my practice, I am the special advisor of gender diversity for the CFP Board Center for Financial Planning. So that does allow me the opportunity to speak at different events on the planning boards of other organizations that are focused on getting more women, more people of color into the profession. So I have the opportunity to be in front of a lot of students. And so whenever there's an opportunity or there's a question, I'm always open for, give me a call. Let's talk about what you're thinking about. And, just extending myself and being a resource where I can. And I think the ultimate resource will be, okay, once I get the firm to where it can, even if you just need to come in and do an internship, or, you've passed the CFP, now you need the experience. Come in and work and get that experience. So that's the type of organization that I want to have. Not so much, revolving door. I do want people to come in and stay and grow, but to be a place where they can come in and learn without that kind of overshadowing of, is this a cultural fit? Because they go in knowing I'm welcome here, I fit here. All that I'm asked to do is be myself, contribute to the firm, to the development of the firm, and grow professionally. So if I can do that, there is a level of satisfaction in just doing that, it's just like, that's the goal.
Oh gosh, I bet that's just the best payment that you could get in this. You mentioned that, D&I initiatives were really kind of coming in vogue, as you say, 10, 15 years ago. And I definitely know that they're more in vogue now than ever before. What are your thoughts on where we are in this and what we can do differently in terms of making sure that we're actually moving the needle forward with D&I initiatives?
So it's sort of, as you mentioned, with the inflection point with the firm, I think we are at an inflection point in this business, and not solely just in financial services, but D&I and equity in general. Because of COVID, that brought up a lot of the inequities that were happening. And then you add on the racial injustices that have just, I won't say just happened, but that have been magnified over the last month. And I think specifically as a profession, we have to make a decision. We have to decide which way we want to go. Is this just a moment in time, or is this really going to be that catalyst to push us to really move into where we say we want to go? Because I've said often that if these particularly large businesses, if they were really intent on having diverse advisor base and diverse firms, they would have done it. Because with anything else, they would have put the money and the resources behind it to make sure that it's happened, because they're held accountable for that. On the whole, companies are not putting the money and the resources and the accountability behind diversity, equity, and inclusion. They will throw some dollars behind it, don't get me wrong. But in many cases, those are just, commas, rounding errors, not any real intentional efforts. And I am hopeful that we don't miss this moment to really move ourselves to where we need to be for the future of not only our profession, but for the future of our country. And I'll just say that I'm hopeful that we do the right thing.
Yeah. That really resonates with me that this industry and industries at large would have done it already had we really made the decision to do it. I appreciate this idea that we are at this inflection point, that we could be catalysts for major change. I'm interested in, when you're on stage in front of students and students of color, what is your advice to them to make sure that they're making a name for themselves in this industry, that they see the future of themselves in this industry?
It's layered, because you also have to recognize that there's a confidence aspect of it and a competence aspect of it. So to, trust your education and what you know, but also encouraging them to build a network and a tribe, because you may go into an organization where you are the only, and it will be challenging. And to have that outside support for when you have those days of, I can't do it, I don't want to do it anymore. Because while I was blessed when I started to not be in a position where I had to deal with discrimination and microaggressions and macroaggressions even, I know far too many people of color and women who deal with it on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. So while that's not my story, I still recognize that there are far too many people who have that story to tell. Mm-hmm. And you need that support to help you through those moments and to be able to guide you. Not having people take you off of your goals. So for instance, I just had a conversation with someone not too long ago, and they were saying, I was so happy to see that you have a firm that your niche are professional Black women. Because when I said that to someone who I call a mentor, they were just like, that ain't gonna work. And far too many times you have that happen, because the value of either women or the value of people of color, Black people in particular, is not fully seen and recognized in our profession. And granted, your model will have to be different than the customary model. So you're not going to do it the way that your mentor may have built their practice, but know that you can do it. And so that's why the beauty of, I encourage them to find out all of the different models that are out there. When I started, I thought there was just one way. Mm-hmm. One, I didn't do any investigation. And at that time, there were some, but the way that this profession has opened up over the last 20 years is incredible. I mean, it would be exciting. I'm excited for anyone who's entering, any person who is fully aware of all that's out there. It's an exciting time to be a financial planner. But so I encourage them to do the research and know all the models that are available. Whether you're starting off at an insurance company, an insurance-based broker-dealer, you're working for a wirehouse, you're at an independent firm, or you go the RIA route. Just know what's available. And then you make the choice of what you feel is best for you. Now, granted, where you start may not be where you finish, because where I started, I've gone 2-3 different ways to end up where I am now. But perhaps if I had known everything early on, I may have made a different decision, but who's to say? And I've learned from all of those experiences. They've made me a better planner, a better advisor, a better business person throughout those experiences. But I think it's important, because I see too many times in talking to advisors who are kind of feel stuck in a situation because they don't know what else is out there. And unfortunately, there are some firms that don't want their folks to know what else is out there. So my job is to bring that knowledge and information, and then they do with it what they choose to do, but knowing that it's there. This is where you should go, this is where you should look, and then you make the decision that's right for you.
Yeah. I love that idea of a scavenger hunt in this industry, kind of just remaining curious that there's really no wrong move to make, because what you're going to get from it is either knowing that that's the space you want to be in, or that's definitely not the space you want to be in. And to know that, you can jump around a bit before you land on your long-term position is really good advice. I can hear.
And even with people who are starting out in a way, but, may have say they're a career changer. So the other beauty of the way that this profession is evolving, because we're still very new as a profession. And we know that there are colleges and universities who are, getting financial planning programs started. There are diversity efforts there. They need more faculty members to come in and teach those classes. They need more diverse faculty members, more women, more people of color to, present this material to these growing programs. And so that is another area that I'm interested in. So I tell people, again, you don't always have to do it just one way. Certainly when I grew up, it was you go do something and that's what you do. You only do that because that's, you got to focus and pay attention. So, now the beauty is I can have my practice. I can also consult and talk about why we need diversity in the profession. And in addition, I can also be a faculty member somewhere and teach young advisors, young not just in age, but young as in experience, teach them about the business. And it's all still wrapped up in financial planning. Before it was, you got to stay in one lane and just do that thing. And that's all you do. But because of one, I think that the next generation, millennials, have taught us that, we can do different things and be good at all of them. And it still all comes together. And so those are other ways that I tell, young people, particularly young Black people or Black women, that these are other opportunities. So don't see it as, how am I going to survive? These are ways that you can still survive, build your practice, build your knowledge, and, do what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, great advice. And I think that really is a great example of how different talents can be utilized within this industry, that we don't all have to be that cookie cutter, answer the questions correctly on the sheet to make sure we make it in the industry. That, someone who's very charismatic can go, as you say, and begin to speak on stage. People who really love the numbers can really sit and do that. There's all sorts of different routes in this profession. And I can hear that coach mentality come out of you as you talk through some of this stuff. So I can picture that your clients are very lucky to have you. And I'm interested in, how does that translate? How does this kind of coach approach translate to the work that you do with your Black business owner women that you work with? What kind of advice is not just financial planning related, are you giving to your clients?
So, it really is, because a lot of it I can take, advice I take for myself, and just recognizing the obstacles that we face. Those are, a given, but how can we rise above that and still do what it is that we want to do and do it successfully? So, hopefully I'm seen as part of that tribe that they have, that they need of support, and wanting just to continue to grow that for them. And knowing that a lot of times it's people who are doing it solo, just like I am, but after a while that gets tired. You want to, be a part of something where 1 + 1 = more than just 2, to really leverage resources. And, just personally, COVID has shown us that we need to be able to disconnect at times. So when it's just you can't even really get away comfortably, because you're always thinking about, well, what if somebody has an emergency? So how do you, even talking to clients about, is potentially merge, is that something that is a viable choice that might make sense? How can you, to build a bigger organization, might be combining with someone else, not just doing everything on your own, because, eventually you do want to build something that can be passed on, that has value, potentially being sold to someone else, or, so just thinking about the bigger picture and reminding them of, this is not, you're not putting all this blood, sweat, and tears in for nothing. We're all trying to get to somewhere, and how can we be supportive of one another in that process?
Great. When you think about kind of the next 10 years, you mentioned partnering, you've mentioned mentoring, you've mentioned having additional teammates on your team. What do you really see happening with your firm in terms of growth and impact?
So you're turning the tables. You're doing a coaching thing for me too. Like, what is your vision? Certainly see in the next 10 years that I, would be in a position where I've joined, and in probably 10 years down the road, that would also have been an opportunity to not only have one transaction in terms of merging with someone, but having been in an opportunity to even not just grow organically, but grow by acquisition. So we hear all the time about the aging of financial advisors and that there's not enough succession planning. So really being strategic in finding those opportunities where someone may be looking to, retire out of the business and put in place mechanisms to be able to, buy a thriving practice and, grow that way as well. So, I see that and, still continuing to mentor and be a resource for other young planners coming into the business, as well as, that same way as you're building a practice means that you need more people on your team. So having a place where people can come in and, thrive in their profession, but also thrive financially. So, that where I don't want to have it where people are, kind of that eat what you kill thing. I don't like that business model. You know what you're making, and there's the opportunity to receive bonus because of what the group efforts are. So building that firm that I want to be, that I would want to be a part of. And so when people come in, they're telling people, you know what, I love where I work. And they're telling other people. And so it's not that we're even going out recruiting, just as you want to have, unsolicited referrals for business, you want the people who work with you to speak kindly and positively about your firm, where other people want to come and be a part of that too.
Mm-hmm. I love the evolution that many members like yourself, Jocelyn, get to, whereas as they're hitting this stage, they really are asking themselves, do I want to be a boss or do I want to be the face of the company? Do I want to run the business? And what a gift for all of us in this industry that there are those different routes. I see so much energy around this idea for you to really be that employer that people look up to and admire and help build and feel ownership in what they're building with. I don't ever like looking back at past mistakes, but I'm wondering, was there anything in your career history that you would have done differently if you had the chance, that you could have saved time in or money or emotional energy? Any big thing that you wish you could have just tweaked a little bit?
Well, certainly starting out, if I had been more diligent in the beginning of having that, being more financially prepared to start in this business, that would have made a tremendous difference. Because while I love the autonomy of running my own business, there are some financial sacrifices that I have made over the last 20 years. And so I have catching up to do. So just kind of navigating that is certainly something I probably would have looked at merging and partnering sooner, much sooner. Yeah.
Yeah. And that would just be because you really feel at this point that you're kind of tapped in terms of where your energy can go, or you just think you could have had more impact faster?
More impact faster. And, the merging part, so I see it as, it's like a marriage. So for someone who's never been married before, that's a huge, because it's something, because you're in a relationship with whoever you merge with. Mm-hmm. And you have to make sure it's the right fit. It can't just be, you were friends with someone and, you were cool, they were cool, but, you have to, it is a business. And so I've done that before and it wasn't the right fit. So now, I've learned from those lessons. So I know what to look for in this next go round, because, I don't want to be twice divorced in business. So, you have additional perspective and things that you're like, hey, okay, I see this. Let me ask a question about that. What are you thinking? What what does it look like? And in a lot of cases, you are forsaking, your ego has to be left at the door too, because it's not just you making decisions. And you have to say to yourself, is whatever we're discussing, and I might be, hell-bent on standing my ground, at the end of the day, is it worth it? So it's also, I guess, it's kind of marriage counseling too. So those are the same things that you'd be told if you were going to marriage counseling. So, you just think about it too. You have to look at the greater good and making those decisions for the greater good of the organization.
Yeah, well said. Jocelyn, I could talk to you for hours and hours about your history and your impact on this industry, but if you can believe it, we are at our time. And I'm wondering, Jocelyn, any last words of advice to our listeners just about this industry, your experience, anything you'd want folks to know as they question their own future here?
Well, I said it before, I think it's a great time to get into this business. When we look back, particularly as we look at the global pandemic and the effects of COVID, this is where I think planners really show their value because people have questions and look for direction. Where the business is going, I think, is tremendous. When it comes to being able to color outside of the lines, I think there's great opportunity there. We can do and be so many things. There is not just one way to do it and to be successful at it. So I'm excited about those opportunities. But at the same time, when I think about the profession at large, given what we're experiencing now as a country, I want to be able to look back 10 years from now as I've built, a part of this larger firm and say that the profession took the steps that we needed to take in order to make greater strides in the area of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Because if we miss this moment, I don't think that we will have this again. And if all of the hell that we're going through now, if this doesn't lead us to change, I don't know what it would take then if this doesn't move us to go in the right direction.
Thank you for your thoughts, Jocelyn, so much. I suspect some people may be reaching out to you after this interview, and I hope they do.
Sure.
What a gift to this industry you are, and I've learned so much. I know that our listeners will as well, but you've really built something incredible. Your experience in this industry is admirable, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.